When the mind is restless, the Buddhist way to peace. Even when life is quiet, the mind rarely stays quiet. Even when nothing on the outside is asking anything of you, something on the inside keeps moving. This is not a modern problem. It is what an untrained mind does. In the early Buddhist teachings, this condition is named with two Pali words, uddaka, kukucha. The first, uddaka, means agitation. It describes the mind that races forward, leaning into what has not yet happened, unable to settle on what is actually here. The second, kukucha, means remorse. It describes the mind that gets pulled back into the past, replaying old conversations, second-guessing decisions that were made long ago. These two are paired together in the early teachings as one condition rather than two. The reason is precise. They disturb the mind in the same way. Both of them prevent the mind from settling here, in this moment. One face of restlessness leans into the future. The other returns to the past. But neither is willing to stand in the present. This is why an anxious person can, in the very same moment, fear tomorrow and still relive yesterday. What looks like two separate movements of the mind is actually one pattern wearing two different faces. In the Dhammapada, verse 33, the Buddha describes the mind as fickle and hard to guard, and says, "The wise one straightens it the way a fletcher straightens an arrow." Notice the image he chose. The mind is seen for what it is: restless, hard to hold, in need of careful training. And the response is one of patient craft, like an arrow maker working with wood that does not yet bend straight. If you recognize this in yourself, what you are recognizing has been seen before, named before, and trained with before. The Buddha did not leave this condition unnamed, and he did not leave it without a path of training. Some kinds of restlessness come from real circumstances. A loss, a relationship breaking apart, a pressure that has no exit, physical pain that goes on too long, an injustice you cannot fix. This kind of restlessness has a clear reason. It is not something you invented. It is the natural response of a human being meeting something genuinely difficult. Other kinds of restlessness arrive without any clear reason at all. You are sitting still. The meal is on the table. The people you love are safe, and still, the mind is spinning. A wave of anxiety rises from somewhere you cannot point to, an unease without any return address. The Buddha never denied the difficulty of outer life. He never said that with the right state of mind, the storms of life would stop coming. He saw very clearly what every generation of human beings has carried. We are exhausted by reality, and we are also exhausted by our own thinking about reality. But he asked one question, and this question is the one that opens the entire teaching. What is really keeping the mind running? Is it the circumstances themselves, or is it something else? Because two people facing the same situation can carry two completely different levels of restlessness. One person loses a job and finds the next step within weeks. Another person loses the same job and cannot sleep for months. The circumstances are conditions, yes, but restlessness is born not only from the circumstances themselves. It is also born from the way the mind relates to them. That is where the Buddha pointed. And his answer begins with a statement that may sound surprising. In the Anguttara Nikaya, paragraph 49, he speaks of the mind as something luminous in its nature, and yet darkened again and again by what he called incoming defilements, states that arrive from outside, settle in the mind for a while, and then pass. His meaning here needs care, because it is often misunderstood. He is not saying that every ordinary state of mind is already pure. That reading would miss his point entirely. What he is pointing out is something more practical. Restlessness is not the permanent owner of your mind. It arises through conditions, and what arises through conditions can also fade when those conditions change. So what are those conditions? They are not mysterious. The mind keeps making one repeated movement, often before you notice it. It tries to hold what cannot be held, and this movement shows up in three ordinary ways that anyone, if they look carefully, can recognize. The mind meets something pleasant, and it tries to keep that pleasant thing forever. A moment of connection with someone you love. The feeling of being understood. The taste of a good day. The mind reaches for it, clings to it, asks it to stay, refuses to let it pass. The mind meets something unpleasant, and it tries to push that unpleasant thing away immediately. A criticism that lands harder than expected. A worry that arrives in the body before the words. A discomfort that will not name itself. It pushes against the experience, argues with it, and demands that it disappear. And then there is the third movement, which is more subtle than the first two. The mind carries a quiet picture of how life should be, the kind of relationship it should have, the kind of work it should be doing, the kind of person it should be by this age, and it demands that the actual unfolding of life match this internal picture. When reality refuses to match, the mind keeps pressing, keeps insisting, keeps refusing the version of life that is actually here. These three movements are the same act dressed in three different forms: clinging, resisting, demanding. But life keeps moving. The pleasant fades, the unpleasant changes, and the private picture in the mind never fully matches what is here. These three movements never reach what they are reaching for. The reaching does not end, and that constant reaching is restlessness. This is the line worth carrying with you. Restlessness is the sound of a hand clenching what was never meant to be held. So, restlessness, seen this way, is not something you have. It is something the mind is doing, even when you do not realize it is doing it. And what is being formed in this way can also be understood and slowly, with care, released. You might be thinking at this point that restlessness is just an inconvenience, that you can live with it. But the Buddha looked at it more deeply. He placed restlessness in a category called the 5 hindrances. The Pali term is panka nivaranani. The English word hindrance captures something important about how he saw them. He treated them as inner conditions to be understood. They cover the natural clarity of the mind, 5 forces that get in the way of clear seeing. And restlessness, paired with its twin of regret, is one of them. In the Sangharava Sutta, the Buddha gives an image that has stayed sharp for 2,500 years. He asks the listener to imagine a bowl of clear water. You want to see your face in it, so you lean down close. But the wind keeps blowing across the surface, and the surface keeps rippling. You cannot see your face. You can only see a fragmented, moving reflection. The water is not dirty. The water is not damaged. The water is simply in motion. This is the restless mind. The mind itself has not become unsound. The surface is just rippling, and because it is rippling, you cannot see clearly what is actually happening inside you. You cannot see what you are feeding, what direction you are moving in, and what your life is slowly becoming. It is the motion of surface that prevents anything from being seen clearly. This is the true cost of restlessness. The discomfort is real, sometimes severe, and we should not pretend it is small. But the discomfort is not the deepest cost. The deepest cost is that little by little you stop seeing your own life clearly. You lose touch with what you actually want. You lose touch with what actually matters to you. You lose touch with what is happening to you day by day, while you are too distracted to notice the changes as they happen. This is why the Buddha did not treat restlessness as a small mood. He placed it among the hindrances because it blocks clear seeing. It is one of the conditions that can shape a life before the person sees what is happening. You may have tried breathing, meditation, distraction, advice from friends, counting to 10, all the ordinary methods that are commonly suggested. And still, late at night, when the lights are off and there is nothing left to distract you, the same thought comes back. The same worry, the same ache as last night, the same ache as last month. Something painful begins to happen at that point. You begin to feel that calming yourself, something that sounds so simple, is just not happening for you. You begin to suspect that maybe these teachings are not really meant for someone like you. That maybe peace is simply not available to someone whose mind feels this restless. 2,500 years ago, the Buddha gave his monks a teaching for exactly this kind of moment. He did not give them a slogan. He did not give them a single technique. He gave them 5 methods to use in a deliberate sequence. The teaching is called the Vitakasantana Sutta, the stilling of thoughts. Inside this teaching, the Buddha offers these 5 methods for working with persistent, unwholesome thoughts. They can be heard as a progression. You begin with the gentlest method. You move to stronger methods only when the gentler ones do not succeed. The Buddha is not asking you to fight your way through difficulty with a single weapon. He is giving you a graded response, suited to how strong the thought has actually become. The first method is substitution. The Buddha gives an image from craft to explain it. He says that when a carpenter is working with a wooden plank and there is a peg already stuck in a hole, the carpenter uses a smaller, finer peg to push the larger one out. This is the picture for the first method. When an unwholesome thought arises in the mind, you actively bring in the opposite, healthier thought to take its place. If anger is rising, you turn to patience. If craving is rising, you turn to contentment with what is already enough. If despair is rising, you turn toward what is still wholesome, still possible, still not lost. An untrained mind rarely stays empty for long. Something will fill the space. The only real question is what? Although this might at first sound like avoidance, what is actually happening here is more careful than that. It is the deliberate work of changing the fuel that the mind is burning on. The mind will burn on something, whether you choose it or not. With practice, that something can become a conscious choice, instead of whatever happens to drift in by accident. If substitution does not work, the Buddha moves to the second method. Here you take a different approach. You stay with the thought, but you ask yourself a different kind of question. Where is this thought leading me? What is it feeding in me? What is it slowly turning me into? If I keep listening to it, the mind keeps nourishing a thought because it has not yet seen the real cost of that thought. The mind sees only the immediate satisfaction of indulging it, the small comfort of self-pity, the familiar pull of resentment, the quiet pleasure of a worry well rehearsed. The mind does not see what these states are doing to the person who carries them over years, over decades. When the cost finally becomes clear, you do not merely understand it as an idea. You feel it weighing on your life. Then letting go is no longer simply discipline. It also becomes the natural movement of a mind that no longer wants what it has been feeding. If the second method does not work either, the Buddha moves to a third, which is non-engagement. He teaches that sometimes the wisest move is to turn the attention elsewhere. Do not face the thought directly. Do not argue with it. Do not try to refute it. Simply give it no audience. Some people will hear this as avoidance. The wisdom here is different from avoidance. There are some thoughts that grow larger the more you look at them. Like a fire that needs oxygen, certain thoughts need attention in order to keep burning. Attention gives a thought momentum. When that attention is withdrawn wisely, even a strong thought begins, eventually, to settle. If non-engagement also fails, the Buddha moves to the fourth method, which is the most subtle of all. The traditional language calls it the stilling of the formation of the thought. What this means in practice is something specific. Do not enter the story that the thought is telling you. Instead, watch how the thought is being built. A thought does not appear from nowhere. It is assembled piece by piece in a process so quick that you usually miss it. A memory rises in the mind, an image forms, the body tightens somewhere, perhaps in the chest, perhaps in the jaw. A feeling moves through. A conclusion is reached almost automatically, and in less than a second, the assembled thought announces itself as if it were simply true. The fourth method is to watch this assembly happening, to see the thought being constructed, instead of living inside what the thought says. When the construction is seen as construction, the mind is no longer fully held inside the conclusion. The thought may still be there, but you are no longer believing it in quite the same way. You have stepped, even slightly, outside of it. And if even this does not work, the Buddha gives the final method, determined restraint. He was realistic. Sometimes the earlier methods do not succeed. In the sutta, he describes this last method with strong language. He says the practitioner should press teeth against teeth, press the tongue against the roof of the mouth, and restrain the mind with the mind, the way a strong person might hold down someone weaker. This belongs at the end of the sequence. It is used only when all the gentler methods have been tried, and the thought is still moving in a direction that will cause real harm, toward an action that would damage another person or damage yourself. A careful word is needed here, because this method can be misunderstood. The restraint here is the response of someone who has watched the mind move toward real harm before, and who knows what happens when nothing intervenes. There is care in it. The Buddha's compassion is not always soft in tone. Sometimes compassion takes the form of restraint, the way a parent might gently but firmly stop a child from running into traffic. The structure of this teaching is what makes it remarkable. The Buddha begins with redirection, then reflection, then non-engagement, then closer observation, and only at the end, firm restraint. The mind is not beyond training. This is why the Dhammapada in verse 35 says, "The training of the mind is good, and a trained mind brings happiness." Training the mind in this sense is an act of care. At the end of the sutta, the Buddha calls the one who has become skilled in all 5 methods a master of the paths of thought. In Pali, the phrase is Vasi Vitaka Paryaya Pathesu. It means someone who commands the roads of the mind. Someone for whom the mind is no longer simply something that happens to them. This is why the path is called training. The mind is not mastered by inspiration. It is mastered by repeated, careful practice. The methods themselves are simple. The training is long. But the possibility is real. Many of us imagine peace as a state, an empty mind, pleasant feelings, comfortable circumstances, and we set out with real sincerity to reach that state. We meditate in order to get there. We breathe in order to get there. We arrange our lives around the hope of one day arriving. But notice the trap hidden inside this picture. If peace is something we do not yet have, then peace becomes one more goal to chase, one more thing to attain, one more reason for the mind to keep running. Even the pursuit of peace can become another form of restlessness. The mind that was once restless about work, relationships, or the future simply becomes restless about being peaceful. Hear this carefully because it is easy to misunderstand. The recognition of this trap does not cancel practice. It purifies practice. We still train, we still sit. We still work with the methods. What changes is that we stop turning the training itself into another object of craving. We stop using practice as a way to escape experience, and we begin using it as a way to understand what is actually happening. So what is peace then? The Buddha's teaching stays very practical here. Peace is not made by forcing the mind to become empty. It begins when the mind sees clearly how it is adding pressure to experience, grasping what is pleasant, resisting what is painful, and demanding that life match the picture inside. When that pressure is seen, even a little, something changes. The pleasant can be enjoyed without needing it to last forever. The painful can be met without immediately turning it into a war. And the present moment can be known more simply, without being forced to become something else. I will not promise you that listening to all of this will leave your mind free of restlessness. That would not be honest. But tonight, if your mind is not at rest, you do not need to add a second struggle on top of it. When the wish for rest becomes tight, demanding, and impatient, that wish itself becomes part of the restlessness. You only need to see what is happening, and in the moment of seeing it clearly, the pressure around the thought begins to ease. The thought may still be there. The feeling may still be there, but the mind is no longer adding the same weight on top of them. The Buddha approached the restless mind with understanding. When the movements that create restlessness are seen clearly, even for a moment, they lose some of their power. That is where practice begins again. Learning over and over how to meet this moment without adding more grasping, more resistance, or more demand.